Excited about today's conversation because it is a topic that is truly close to my heart, in addition to caregiving in general. And I am delighted to have someone like Gopika and talk about her book. Caregiving in Print and Pictures, as you can imagine, is a journey that we undertook because social narratives around anything, specifically caregivers and caregiving, is deeply informed by the books that we read, the stories that we write, whether we tell them in print or we tell them in pictures. And caregiving in print and pictures is about exploring how caregivers and caregiving in different circumstances have informed our ideas up until now, and how that might need to shift as the world is shifting. One of the ideas is celebrating differences. Today is our 10th session, and today we will be talking about how we might need to look at neurodiversity. And I couldn't think of a better person to have this conversation with. Welcome, Gopika.
Thank you so much, Bhavana. It is always a pleasure to come and talk to you. And it's really nice to be here. It's nice to be able to talk about my book, Beyond the Blue. And like I was telling you, that is where the journey began. I feel that I'm doing a lot of talks, a lot of conversations on autism as a whole. And it's nice to go back and talk about the book and talk about the whole process and how the book has been, how my caregiving has been instrumental in writing the book, and the book has in turn impacted my caregiving. So it's always lovely to talk to you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And as we embark on this session, it is our ritual to make sure that although I see many, many familiar faces on this session, and there will be people who know about Caregiver Saathi, who will probably watch this asynchronously on our YouTube channel or other channels, it might be worth a while to pause and to just take stock of who we are. What is Caregiver Saathi? At Caregiver Saathi, we aim to have a platform that empowers the family caregivers by creating an ecosystem of well-being and healing for the primary caregivers that are navigating either terminal illness, chronic, or any life-limiting condition. Life-limiting condition, as we understand, is life-limiting, as some of our ideas of what might be life-limiting, but are perhaps not so life-limiting. And that's exactly the exploration that we will do. We would like to support caregivers during their caregiving journeys and beyond, and be able to say, what is a new way to frame what care is? How do we do this? We do this through multiple ways and are open to always add new ways. So if you have any ideas, feel free to let us know. The first, of course, is creating awareness programs, whether it is webinars, conversations with gentle warriors, or even looking at the perspective of our healers or doctors. It is helpful to have a helpline, somebody that you can call out, reach out to, both for emotional support as well as for guidance and information. Third, through our healing circles or support groups. And we find that although it is really challenging and it is a new idea about support groups and healing circles, but we do hope that many of you will be encouraged to participate in it in various other roles. You don't have to participate in a healing circle when you need it. You can participate in it in different life stages as well. And of course, nudge those who might need it. It is an area that has been unexplored and less understood, so research is definitely essential. Research also helps us put out some crazy numbers that can make people sit up and listen to us. And therefore, research is helpful. not just research that we conduct ourselves, but also research that has been conducted by others. And this might include curated information, handbooks, etc. Look at our new website and give us feedback about what you think is there or could be there, and we would be happy to incorporate your feedback. Finally, looking at social media has helped us reach out to a very large population in different formats. So when we do these sessions, we are present on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and we hope that this material will be available for use, not just for those who can join us right now, but also those who may want to take a breather, maybe at 10 p.m. in the night, and watch this program. We have built a wide range of resources, and I will invite you to have a look at them, whether it is our app or website, or our training programs that are both delivered online and offline, community sensitization through podcasts, our everyday caregiving mantras, and a variety of communication on our various handles, coaching, counseling at an individual as well as a family level, and finally, a very vast volunteer base that supports us both in the front end for caregiving, on ground, as well as at the back end to help us build an institution that can truly shift how caregiving is understood and delivered. There are many ways in which you can get involved. You can participate by nudging people to not just tell their caregiving stories. And today we will hear a little bit from Gopika herself, but also we are more than happy to have you host these series. So if you think that you can hold the space for a caregiver and would like to host these series, just write into us. Spread the word. There is nothing like in-person communication. Volunteer with us. There are a variety of forms in which you can volunteer. You can partner with us, whichever format that you are at. Whether you're an NGO or a hospital or a healthcare person or an author, you could partner with us. And of course, you could join us as an intern or a fellow of the organization. Like I told you, support groups can be participated in whichever stage of life you're in. We need funds, so you can help us raise funds. You can collaborate with us and you can participate in our research efforts. Or finally, you could be a caregiver Saathi in which you could support a caregiver by hand-holding them through their journey. This will, of course, require you to be trained. Today's session is an interaction with our guest, the author, and we will have a question answer session after that. You are welcome to leave your questions in the chat. Most importantly, we would love for you to give us feedback and suggestions so that these conversations can be made more meaningful. And if you know of other authors that we should invite, please let us know. Some housekeeping. Keep your microphones on mute. If your camera is not stable, then please don't turn it on. It can be a distraction. If you have a question, we would love for you to ask it yourself. So you may please join in at that point. We are recording this session and some section of the discussion may be used for sharing later. And the speaker section is what will be live on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn and can be accessed for viewing later. In order to help us continue make the webinars better, please provide us with feedback. And this discussion will be used for our conversations and other designs in the future. An introduction to our author, Gopika. Well, I have to first say that she is totally a fun person and somebody you can have an authentic, honest conversation with. Far more important than all the other accomplishments, but needless, I think accomplishments are equally to be celebrated. Sagopika Kapoor is a neurodiversity consultant, author, and a parent advocate. She has a master's in journalism from Northeastern University, Boston, and has written many best-selling books published by Hay House India. She has been awarded the FICCI Ladies Organization Women Achievers Award for writing. Gopika worked with Autism Intervention Team at Umeed Child Development Center, an organization working with children with developmental disabilities for a decade, where she did therapy, conducted training, and facilitated WHO caregiver skills training program in Mumbai. In Feb 2020, Gopika became an independent consultant and published Beyond the Blue. It's a lovely name that triggers many things, and I would love for Gopika to tell us about it. Love, Life, and Autism, a realistic, positive book for parents of children with autism that includes her personal and professional experiences with the condition. What is exciting is that the book is now being translated in Hindi and will have many, many more people accessing it. Gopika is an independent consultant with Rangam Consultants on recruitment and hiring neurodivergent employees, and with point of view on sexuality and disability. Very, very important topics to be spoken about. Gopika also speaks on autism and inclusion at schools, colleges, clubs, and forums like Caregiver Saathi. Welcome, Gopika. What would you have to say to start today evening's conversation?
I want to thank you, Bhavana, for inviting me here. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And it's really lovely to be able to talk about Beyond the Blue, which is, I think, the book that is the closest to my heart of all the books that I've written, and really does kind of encapsulate my journey with my son. So thank you very, very much for having me here. I'm looking forward to a wonderful conversation. Like all our conversations that we've had have been really amazing. And so I'm looking forward to one more.
You know, when we were starting this conversation, I was asking you about what is your intention for today's conversation. So let's start from that.
Right. So, you know, Beyond the Blue came out in November 2020. So I wrote it through the pandemic. It was published through the first lockdown, rather. It was published, came out to great kind of fanfare, and, you know, a first book on autism by a parent. It was a lot of kind of hoopla around the book. And then what happened was that I think somewhere along the way, the book was kind of forgotten. The cause was highlighted, which is something which is very good. I'm really glad about that. You know, and I was invited to speak at multiple fora on autism, on neurodiversity, started working after that on inclusive hiring practices, started consulting with, I was consulting with Point of View on creating a beautiful toolkit for young women with disabilities and sexuality. And so it kind of took on a life of its own. And somewhere in that, Beyond the Blue was kind of forgotten, you know. And so really, it is lovely to be able to come here and talk about the book, because it is a book that is very, very close to my heart. Like I said, it's a book which has impacted me in so many ways. And I think the primary way in which it has impacted me is that writing the book was so cathartic. And I think it gave me a completely different level of acceptance for my son once I wrote it, because I really relived all the times and all the experiences that we've shared, the fun times, the laughter, the tears, the awful times, the stress, the whole process of arriving at a point of complete and total acceptance. And you know, as we're speaking, I'm going through this whole process of trying to get him these grace marks for his NIOS. And so I've been going to the government hospitals, trying to get a certification done and this and that, and he has to be reassessed and stuff like that. So I've been spending the last few days doing that. And I was reflecting on the first time I went through this whole process, because all kids with disabilities have to have certification from government hospitals, which states that, you know, this is what it is. And then you get some kind of certificate which gives you concessions for exams and stuff like that. And I was reflecting on it and thinking about how the first time I went through this process, it was so traumatic for me, and it was like reliving the whole experience. And I was like so depressed and thinking about it, and oh my God, his IQ is this, and his level of intelligence is this, and he can't do this and can't do that. And this time around, when I went, and it's just been this past week, I was just thinking, I said, firstly, how far he's come. And the other thing was that I was looking at all these parameters and things like that, and I realized how far I've come, because these things didn't matter. It didn't matter to me what his IQ was. It didn't matter to me what this whole stuff was. And I realized that a large part of that has to do with Beyond the Blue. Because in writing the book, it made me totally accept and appreciate and love my son so much more. And so I don't now, even before I wrote the book, there was some part of me that wanted him to fit in with the norm. Now I say, no, he's a norm unto himself. Let him be, And so that is the beauty of the book, and I'm really happy to be able to talk about it.
You have triggered so much curiosity by just giving that introduction. Let's take a moment and paint the context. So tell us what the background is, and would you like to name your son and bring him into the conversation and talk to us about how it started?
Okay. How it started. Wow. So my son's name is Veer. He and my daughter Gayatri are twins. And it started when they were a month short of 3. And I started noticing that there were things. I mean, I had been noticing, I think, that there was a vast difference in their development. But I ignored it. And it would be the thing that would keep me up late at night, but I would brush it aside. As most of us are known for literally like being like ostrich and burying our heads in the ground. I was an ostrich in this case. And so what happened was that, at one point of time, we realized that he has to get a diagnosis. We got a diagnosis. I went in fully expecting dyslexia, because at that time, Tare Zameen Par had come out and there was all this conversation about dyslexia. And I said, okay, fine, he'll be, we'll find out he's got dyslexia, and that'll be the end of it. We'll do some little intervention and that's it. And we came out with an autism diagnosis. And it was something which was, my God, it was like earth-shattering. And slowly picked up the pieces, moved on, started getting in therapy. We'd rush from one end to the other of the city for therapy, do different kinds of things, started seeing little bit progress, didn't see progress. It was a long journey. About 2 years into his diagnosis, I decided that I need to do something for other kids like him. Veer had been very lucky because he had access to the right kind of medical care, not medical care, I should say therapeutic services. Very early on, we didn't have to worry about how to pay for them. And so I realized that I needed to do something to give back. And so I joined Umeed's Child Development Center, where he was diagnosed. And the next 10 years was spent there, learning so much, not just about autism, but really about life. So I must have worked with about 400 to 500 kids and their families during the time that I worked there. And each kid and each family taught me something. I mean, if I were to shut my eyes and think about all the kids, I may not recall all of them. I certainly will not recall all of them because I have a very bad memory. But I can very clearly think of kids who have taught me so much and whose parents have taught me so much. And so worked there for 10 years. And in that time, I did not even reveal to any patient that I have a kid who's on the spectrum, because I did not have that level of acceptance. And it was only after 2019 when an article was published on Veer and me in a mainstream newspaper that I was able to talk about it. I was able to be open about it. It was my coming out of the closet moment, so to speak. And so that really was something which kind of propelled me onto this journey. a journey which then took me out of Umeed to becoming a consultant with parents, to writing Beyond the Blue, to moving on to currently working in diversity, equity, and inclusion, hiring and recruitment for people who are neurodivergent, to working, like I said earlier, to a program for young women on sexuality and disability, to taking a coding curriculum and tweaking it for people who are neurodivergent, and on to things which I cannot even imagine. So it's been quite a journey. And along the way, I have seen Veer grow to be this strapping young man who is quite a delight to be with. And I really enjoy him a lot. He's not a chatterbox. Being with him is very restful because, we have conversations, but we don't have to keep talking all the time, but we just enjoy each other's company.
There's something to be said about the magic of a mother's love, right?
True.
However stereotypical and cliched that might be.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah, but there is something to be said about the faith that a mother has. I know, such a cliche, but beautiful. Beyond the Blue, what is that?
So it's actually currently, even in the 2 years that it's been published, it's become a little controversial. So, Autism Speaks, which is an organization in the US, started by a couple called Bob and Sue Wright. Their grandson is autistic. They started an organization called Autism Speaks, and they started this campaign called Light It Up Blue. Now, in which buildings on 2nd April, which is World Autism Awareness Day, were lit up blue all over. So even now you have buildings like the Eiffel Tower, the Taj, the Sphinx in Egypt, all these the Sydney Opera House are all lit up blue, to support autism awareness. This organization is controversial because they don't have any self-advocates or people who are autistic on their board. They have nobody who can speak from the autistic person's perspective, and so it's quite controversial in that sense. But this was what I knew at the time, right? So blue is the color that is associated with autism. So when I started out writing this, when I started out naming this book Beyond the Blue, I intended it only for parents. I thought the target audience will be parents of kids who have autism. And my whole purpose was that it should be called Beyond the Blue, because initially when you get your diagnosis or your child's diagnosis, you look at that child and the only thing you see is big autism. That's all you're seeing. And behind that, there's a child. There's a child who's funny, there's a child who's quirky, there's a child who maybe likes certain things, who doesn't like certain things, who loves to sing, who's good at something, who's not good at something, who has their own personality. Every kid has their own personality. But all you're seeing at that moment, and when I say you, I mean me also, because for years, that's all I saw, is the autism. That's all that you would see. Over time, you realize that, okay, there is so much more to this child. So I would often, tell people that initially all I could see when I saw Veer was the autism. Then I realized that, okay, here is my son. He loves to cycle. He loves to do puzzles. He does this. He does that, this, whatever it is. Oh, and he also has autism, right? And maybe there are parts of that autism that make him who he is. But I learned over time to see him in his entirety. And so that is what I wanted parents to see. The book came out, and the responses I got from people were incredible. Somebody told me, this is a book that you've written, it should be read by all parents. Somebody else told me, who did not have children, told me, this book has taught me about resilience. And it is a book that is about resilience. So it is something which should be read by everybody. It's something which I did not expect. And I realized then that actually this is a book to be read by anybody about anybody else who is different. So it could be about somebody with a disability. It could be somebody who is, alternate sexuality or gender. It could be about somebody who's different in any way, And I realized that when you look at our society, we are increasingly becoming a society of like people. Okay. So it is like saying that, Bhavna, I like you because you're like me, and that's the reason why I like you. It doesn't matter to me what else, but you're like me, so I like you. But if you're not like me, I will not like you.
Yeah.
Okay. Which means that anybody who's even a little bit different is somebody I don't like.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there are people who are different, and the thing is that people are becoming more and more vocal about these differences, which is good, but then they're getting more and more polarized.
That's right.
Right? And so I really felt that this is Beyond the Blue is something which is, to me now symbolizes something which is really about, yes, resilience, like one of the readers suggested, but also just about accepting people who are different and just saying that, you know what, there's space for you, there's space for me, I accept you, I celebrate you, I respect you, and let's all just live together. That we don't have to be alike to coexist.
Right, right. I also think that probably over a period of time, we have been socialized into an idea of what is okay, what is normal. And that is such a narrow band that we tend to look at many things there, and therefore differences just become so much harder. And we are so much enriched by the fact that people like you are calling this out in a beautiful way and letting us know. But I was just reminded of a very dear friend of mine whose son, when was detected or diagnosed, and it was very hard for me to have a conversation, right? To bring up the topic. I knew, but I didn't know how I could offer my solidarity or support or love, because, it might just seem odd. Like, why are you bringing this up at all? Would you have said this in any other circumstance? And there were two responses. So, immediately the husband said, it's a very big spectrum and he is on the lower end. Just there's some kind of an expression like that.
That was my response to myself. That was my justification for years.
Yeah, and I can so understand the need to say something like this, right? But that was the response. So like to just kind of present that it's okay.
Yeah, to downplay it. Yeah.
The second was, which was a little more heartbreaking, was the mother feeling responsible. That maybe she was not careful enough at the time of pregnancy, maybe she didn't give it enough attention, and maybe this is an outcome for that. And as someone who loves this person, it was so hard for me to reach out without feeling like I might sound like patronizing, I might sound like sympathizing, and this is not my place, all of those things.
Right.
You to tell us, if you can, about any of these emotions that you may have gone through at, the early stages.
Oh God, I went through like all 5 stages of grief, and I have described them in great detail in Beyond the Blue. So starting out with denial. Okay, so autism is characterized or kind of how do I put it? It's kind of in the diagnostic DSM, which is a diagnostic manual of mental illnesses and disorders. And according to DSM-4, which was the previous version, it was separated into Asperger's syndrome, which is what is called typically genius syndrome, where somebody has very high intellectual capabilities, but is socially awkward. Okay, like a Sheldon Cooper type. Then there is something called PDD-NOS, which is pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specified, and even I don't know what that is. I mean, it's just like this thing which you cannot slot into places, so they just give it that label. And then there is autism spectrum disorder. And I clung on to this this Asperger's kind of label for so long, because I said my son has Asperger's, which means that he's what you call higher functioning. It's all complete hogwash, because under the next DSM, the DSM-5, which is currently used, they classified everything as autism. So whether you have very high IQ, which anyway we know is not used to kind of measure intelligence anymore, whether you have a low IQ, average IQ, whatever it is, if you have autism, you have autism. So went through the whole thing, denial, this doesn't happen to families like ours, it's not happening, that kind of thing. Went through the whole, my son doesn't have autism, he's got Asperger's. Went through a lot of anger. I was so angry. I was angry at the world, the universe. I was angry with all my friends for having these perfect children. I was angry with my poor brother and sister. I was angry with everybody. I was angry with my husband. I was angry with my poor daughter. I was angry with Veer. And I think I was most angry with myself. I was very angry. And that really came out. I mean, I was bitter and angry. It was awful. And then I think what happened was that at some point of time also, because, I'm one of those fix-it people, like, okay, let's try to fix it. So, started working with this therapy, that therapy, read up about it, print these worksheets, do this, do that. And I was exhausted. And that's when the kind of extreme sadness kind of kicked in, that, okay, this is what's going to happen. And so all these emotions were happening simultaneously, side by side, and trying to in between, I would keep trying out things to fix this and the problem. I went to 2 faith healers. I went to 1 past life regressionist. I went to did all sorts of things, and until I reached a point where I said, you know what, this is it. This is my life. If other people look at it, they might think, oh my God, it's such a sad life, but it's my life. And me and my family and I have learned to be happy with the way it is. And I think when that happened, and that happened, I would say about 6 years ago, so not so long ago. I mean, it took a long time for this to happen. And I think it's a process. I think it's a process that everybody has to go through. And when I came to that realization, it's not like a bulb went off one day, no aha moment, but it was a gradual process. And I realized that this is our life. So today, when I kind of look at my life, I think I realized that yes, it is not the kind of life that any of my friends are going through. So I was just thinking about this when I was going to get the certification done, like I mentioned, standing in hospital corridors and waiting to get things done and stuff like that. I was thinking to myself, I said, none of my friends would be doing this. It's not part of their daily routine, but it's okay. It doesn't matter. It's what you make of it. I think a lot of it is your attitude, and I think it has made me. It made me kinder. It made me more empathetic, and it has definitely made me more grateful. Definitely made me more grateful, So I was standing in the sun waiting for my case paper to get done, and I was feeling very hot and a little bit irritable. And I think over time I have trained my mind to say, but at least I got an appointment. At least I've got an appointment. And it's happened very quickly. And isn't that an amazing thing? And so then my mind kind of switches tracks and says, yeah, it's amazing. And so, this needs to get done. And isn't that a fantastic thing? So how lucky am I? So I think I've really trained my mind to think along those lines. And it is only because of this. I mean, who knows, if Veer was neurotypical, I may just be sitting and cribbing all the time about things, about living a life which is perfectly normal, as people call it, and not appreciating the beauty of it. But I think this has really, and all of us are like that. All of us celebrate the small victories. And I think that has made all our lives, and I'm not just talking about my immediate family of my husband and my daughter, I'm talking about my extended family as well. All of us have become kinder, we've all become more empathetic, we've all become more accepting, and we all celebrate every little victory. And I think that is the ripple effect that Veer has created in our life.
How beautiful is that? I would think that if only we could find reasons for ourselves to see how we need not fight against some of these things. We just need to embrace them for what they are. Maybe find some humor in it as well, because I do some of your Facebook posts that I follow very lovingly. They bring a smile to your face, because I do think that it just kind of says, okay, this is what it is, just hop, skip, and jump along. So thank you for that perspective. A little bit about your caregiving journey, and if you could read from your book, that would be lovely.
Sure. I am, just give me a second. So in terms, I think I will probably read a bit from maybe, would you like me to read from something on on acceptance? Do you think that would be something that you would like me to read from, or what would?
I think yes. The story of embracing.
Okay. Sure.
What is.
Yeah.
For me, I think that point at which you embrace what is for what it is.
Yeah.
Is the starting point of transformation.
Absolutely. Okay. So here we go. Okay. Yeah. Acceptance is such an amorphous concept. How do you know when you've reached the stage of acceptance over a situation in your life? Is it when you stop hoping for a different outcome? Does it happen when you feel peace over the way things are? Or when you consciously decide to move on? Or is it all these and more? Acceptance, according to Kubler-Ross, and here I'm talking about Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who's kind of defined the 5 stages of grief, is the last stage of grief, and it usually takes a while to reach this state. Moreover, acceptance continues to grow in degrees. It's not like you wake up one morning and you just accepted the way things are. Like with most processes, it takes time to arrive at. I think my first move towards acceptance was when I started telling my friends about Veer's condition. Our families had been told right at the beginning and were unbelievably supportive, as were Veer's teachers. But all our friends had been wondering where we had disappeared and why we were being so shifty. So I finally summoned up the courage, made a mental list of friends I needed and wanted to tell, and sitting by the phone, took a deep breath and started making calls. After the preliminary asking about family, discussing common friends, and other sundry matters, I started with listen, I have something to tell you. The first call was the hardest. I could feel myself choke up several times, and actually getting the words out felt like pulling teeth from my mouth. But once the first call was over, I felt lighter and at the same time stronger. The calls that followed were of course easier, and I was amazed at the support and kind words that I received from all of them. Time went on, and I oscillated on a daily basis between denial, despair, anger, and flashes of acceptance. I remember an occasion when Veer had been allowed a shadow teacher in school in grade 1. I was at a coffee morning with the other moms. They were talking about the new teacher in class who had been brought in for a kid who was struggling. I pretended not to know anything about it, though on the inside I was squirming and tense, afraid that I would be found out and not accepted among the group. Looking back, I realized that it wasn't just Veer's condition that I needed to accept. I also needed to accept myself as an autism mom, as someone whose kid would need that extra bit of help, as a mom who may not fit in with the rest. Moreover, I had to be okay with it, and it was clear that at that point of time, I still wasn't not. And then I'll just move on a little bit and talk about how my perspective changed. Earlier, when I looked at Veer, I would see a small broken boy one who didn't know how to communicate, who constantly needed my help, who was sad and who lived in the shadow of autism, which would taint every single aspect of his life. Accepting Veer and his condition, including my life as it was and my feelings towards Veer and autism, was like giving myself a gift. I could now see clearly. When I see Veer now, I see a handsome young boy on the brink of adulthood. I see beautiful brown eyes, a dimpled smile, a warm, loud laugh, long, lanky limbs that reach out to hug me several times a day. I see a boy hunched over a computer, intent on a coding program. I see a forehead furrowed in concentration over a 1,000-piece puzzle. I also see autism, but that's a part of who he is, not all of him, because I also see fun. I also see laughter. I also see love.
Yeah. If I was about 16 years old, I would have done this. Yeah. Thank you for that. I think those are words very beautifully strung together, but they just convey a lot.
Thank you.
Well written. You know, I was just thinking also that very interestingly, all the authors that we have been able to invite, you know, there are very few caregivers who have spoken the caregiving journeys from India. I suppose it is something that tends to be invisible or taken for granted, or something that is just a part of who we are. And we don't really necessarily talk about it as much.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that you will, for many who will talk about their caregiving journeys, because they're really human and they are a spiritual journey as well, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's why I felt that this had to be written, you know, because everything I read was from the US or the UK or Australia or Europe. And I mean, I could relate to the autism bit, but I could relate to the rest of it, you know. And I think because the book, like I told you earlier, was so cathartic, I think it came out as extremely raw and honest. And so I think practically every parent who has read it and has then talked to me about it has said it's so raw. They keep using the word raw. And I didn't realize while writing it that it's actually come out as so raw. But everyone who's read it said it's so raw, to the extent that even my family said, we didn't know you were going through this. I have close friends who said, really, this is like really surprising to me that all these things were inside your head. Why didn't you talk about them? And I said, you know, I had to tell them, I said, listen, this was the sum of a long period of time. It's not just concentrated, you know, in a short period of time. But yeah, I guess the idea was to be completely honest and talk about it, because I think we need to do that. I think we really, really need to do that.
Thank you for doing that. And I'm delighted that, you know, the book is going to be translated in Hindi and it will be available to so many more people. I also find that it's a very interesting pattern that those who write the books have some kind of a journalism writing background. So I suppose it comes like, you know, this is what you're good at, so let's do more of this. Would you like to share any particular story or any particular inspiring incident that may have happened as a consequence of your writing this book, maybe after?
So I have actually, you know, the most beautiful messages which I got after the book came out. And I really value all of them. There's so many people who reached out to me and just said that, you know, parents who said, I'm reading your book and I'm crying, but it's like you're telling my story. And that you've helped me so much. You have no idea how much you've helped me. And for me, that's it, you know, that if I can help people to realize that, you know what, yes, your kid has this condition, okay? You're not going to change it. It's something which you have to accept, you have to live with. But that doesn't mean that your life will be a bad life. You can still have a very happy life. It may not be exactly the life you kind of thought it would be, but so what? Things happen, and you just have to make the most of it. And it's really lovely to get these messages from parents and just say that it's so nice to read about Veer, and then there are all these people who say God bless him, which is very sweet. I feel really lucky because I think he's been blessed by lots of people. So that's a really wonderful thing. And I'm hoping that the Hindi book touches many more lives, because I've also intentionally priced it very low, so that as low as I could possibly kind of price it, so that it's accessible to a lot of people. So while I did have a translator translate the book, I did read every word and make sure that it was all in context and made sense and stuff like that. And I'm hoping that it really is able to get to a lot of people, because a majority of this country doesn't read English and doesn't speak English. And I kept thinking that, if this book has made an impact on people who do speak English, and is probably the only book that exists, because I think it is the only book that has been written by a parent and professional on on autism. Why should it be restricted to an English reading and speaking audience?
Absolutely.
And I think that would be doing the Hindi audience a disservice, because I think they have as much of a right to know and to read and to be able to find out about this. And so this had been something which was my plan, and my New Year's resolution was that this needs to get done, and I'm really happy that it's getting done in the first quarter of the year is happening. So
awesome. I do think that we need to create accessibility of all kinds. My wish for you is that you will have a YouTube channel and maybe something else about the book, and that will make the book reach others who can't even read. Who knows? Would you like to take a moment to honor the people that may have been your support in the caregiving journey?
Thank you. That's a really wonderful idea. So many people. I think I'll start with my husband and my daughter, who have been my absolute rocks. My daughter is he's twin sisters, so she's the same age as him, but she's like a wise old owl. She's extremely mature, and she's really been amazing and continues to be amazing, because there would be times when I'd get really annoyed with Veer, and she'd say, Mama, leave him alone. It's okay. Just leave him, and she's just such a blessing. My husband has really been a rock. So someone was asking me after reading the book that from the book, it seems that you were the principal caregiver. What did Mohit, that's my husband, do? I said he took care of me, because while I was the one who was running around with Veer, he was just starting up his firm in those days, so he didn't get that much time with the kids when they were younger. But he took care of me. So anytime I broke down, anytime I felt depressed, anytime I was thinking, he was there for me, which I think served a huge purpose. And then, of course, my families, my in-laws have been and continue to be amazing. Absolutely fantastic in terms of the support that they've given Veer and all of us. My family has been really, really absolutely wonderful, especially my sister, who is just like one second mother to him, and just will keep telling me, you should do this and you should do that, and we have all these fights because I keep telling her, stop telling me what to do. But then when I think about it, because she is an early childhood educator, she's absolutely right, and I do exactly what she tells me to do with Veer in a lot of cases. And then all the people who Veer has kind of attracted into his life, I very often feel like he has these guardian angels whom he attracts. So starting from, he had an occupational therapist. Her name is Chola Badiani. She's fabulous. She used to come home at that time, and she was just fabulous with him. He had a continues to have a special educator who used to be there with him when he was younger, called Nita Chok. She was absolutely amazing, treated Veer like family, taught him how to read and write. He had a shadow teacher who was also excellent, Parul. So all these people who are in his life, his music teacher Purnima, who again is embraced him so beautifully, and like she says, every time Veer sings, I feel like, you know, like I'm hearing the divine. I mean, I keep telling her, I said, yeah, you hear the divine and I hear the devil, you know, because it's always the mom who it comes out on. But there are so many people he's just managed to attract into his life. And I feel our lives are enriched by all these people. And then, of course, as far as the book goes, I had a fabulous editor, Sunita Nair. My designer, Hazel, was unbelievable because she created the beautiful illustrations. And the book has Veer's handwriting as the chapter headings. And that was her idea. So that was really fabulous. And Umeed was my family for 10 years and continues to be. And that, I think, working there really, really shaped my understanding of autism. Dr. Vibha Krishnamurthy, who continues to be Veer's developmental pediatrician, was so important for us and was hugely instrumental in helping me also come to where I am today. So, I mean, this sounds like an Oscar speech, you know, the music is going to start playing at some point of time, but there's just so many people who kind of supported us and nurtured us. And this reminds me of like a few days after Veer's diagnosis, we had gone to meet Vibha again. And at that time, we were just so concerned about what's going to happen and stuff. And I remember Mohit, my husband, asking her, should we move to Singapore? Should we move to the US? And she said, you know what? Don't, because your network is here. Your support system is here. And if you move anywhere else, you're not going to have that. And as I'm thanking all these people, I'm realizing how true her words were. Because there have been so many people who have nurtured not only him, but us as well. You know, so we have neighbors who are just amazing, you know, who just look out for him. There are people all over who will just look out for him and look out for the rest of us. And that, I think, has just been possible because of the warmth and the goodness that exists out there.
You know, this just goes on to reiterate that it takes a village, right?
It does take a village, absolutely.
So I do think that, like you pointed out, that not only is there people for Veer, like there is the network, caregivers also need caregivers. So
yes,
people
absolutely.
are caregiver Saathis, and we would like to thank them. Yeah. Sorry, my phone is ringing, and I need to be able to turn this off. I would like for you to talk to us about the implications of caregiving on your career.
So, I think my career so I was a journalist in my previous life, a writer, and I think when after Veer's diagnosis, like I said, I realized the extent of my privilege and I felt I needed to give back. And so I joined Umeed where he was diagnosed. I started out doing fundraising there because I'd worked in the past with NGOs and I'd done program management, which involved basically everything. And then I started noticing that the therapists there were doing pretty much what I was doing with Veer. I was doing a lot of work with him at home and they were doing a lot of the work with the other kids. And I thought, okay, maybe I should become a therapist. And so I spoke to Vibha, who runs Umeed, and started working with kids. And so in essence, my caregiving became my career in a sense. And instead of one child, I then had about 400 kids. And like I mentioned, each of them taught me so much. And it was such a lovely experience working with all these kids, all these families. I'm still in touch with a lot of families who I used to work with. I get pictures from them. They send me videos, they send me voice notes. And it's really lovely to hear from them and to learn how wonderfully my kids are growing.
Yeah, Yeah, I think sometimes thank you for saying that, because, you may have, I imagine that you may have had a career and a plan and a trajectory for your career. And as the primary caregiver, that may have, undergone a dramatic change. And I'm so glad that you embraced it, because look at what it has turned out to be. And it's a career that you probably did not imagine, but
no, not at all.
but you're a pioneer in so many ways, and you are helping move the needle in terms of inclusion at so many levels. So I suppose embracing the changes is worth it. I do want to
Yeah.
talk about one other thing, which is the fact that you were the primary caregiver, and you went through the journey that you did, and you had your support system that you had, and writing led to catharsis and new possibilities for you. What are your wishes? So, for example, I would think that a large number of parents worry about their children. Or what are your wishes or hopes for the future, both for Veer and for you?
So for Veer, I want him to be able to live up to his potential. I want him to be given the opportunity to be able to live up to his potential. And I want him to experience a full life, whatever that may be for him. It could be having 2 friends and living independently with them, and going to work, and maybe creating 10,000 piece puzzles instead of 1,000 piece puzzles. That could be what he wants, and if that's what he wants, that's fine. But I want him to have the opportunities for that. And as for me, I really, I got onto this path not really knowing where I was going. I just knew that I wanted to help other kids. And that's how I started out. And then I realized, okay, I'm a writer. I should use my writing skills and do something about it. And then, so that's how Beyond the Blue happened. And then I started working on recruitment and hiring. And so that's how that happened. And it's just gone in a direction, which is now, I'm getting involved in kind of working on, so I worked with a coding company to tweak their curriculum to work on kids with who are on the spectrum, and so to help them do that. I'm starting work with some other ventures, and there's lots of things in the offing. And I think for me, I want a world. My ultimate dream, of course, is a world where kids like Veer, and kids who are different in any way, whether it is a kid who has cerebral palsy or autism or ADHD, or somebody who's still trying to figure out their gender or sexuality, or somebody who's a little bit more introverted than the others, or anything. Any kid who is not like this. This world expects everybody to be perfect and to be an extrovert and go out there and do everything that they're supposed to do. And everybody's not like that, and I really want for a world for these kids and for these individuals to be kinder and more inclusive. Because I think when that world does happen, and I hope it does. I don't know. I'm not. I'm crossing my fingers and hoping and praying. But I think there will be no us and them, and that would be a beautiful thing. Everybody will be an us, and that'll be so lovely.
Amen to that. And I do think that we might be losing out on stuff by not listening to the world that some of the children who have just a different.
Absolutely, I agree with you.
So I hope that we can relax ourselves a little bit and just be open to listen. So thank you for that. I think your publishers have been very kind to have an offer this month for people who might be watching this program. Would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So Beyond the Blue will be available on the, I think the URL which Dishari has just put in the chat box. And there will be no shipping charges. And so you can get your copy and you will not be charged any shipping. And I think it's available at 100 rupees less. And so go out and grab your copy.
Yes, I think like you said, I'm excited about the fact that a perspective on this can actually help us examine our resilience. It can help us examine our biases, and it can help us look at the world beyond the blue, so to speak. So thank you very much. What would you like to say as a means to close today's conversation?
Thank you so much, Bhavana. Always a pleasure to talk to you. And I think I'd just like to leave by just saying that, we talk about April being World Autism Awareness Month. I think awareness is all very well, but I think now we need to start taking concrete action. So when we say acceptance, acceptance is also something which, people talk about, oh, of course I accept and stuff, but let's start doing things, So if you meet somebody who's on the spectrum, be respectful, read up a little bit about it, start taking concrete actions. What can people do to really take concrete actions? Talk to people about it, people who've heard this program, talk to other people about it. I think that's the only way we can kind of move forward and really create that true sense of inclusion, is if more and more people become aware. And I'm hoping that Beyond the Blue is one step in that direction. So
it is most certainly is. And here's to amplifying your voice, and here's to reaching many, many more people, and here's to many more translations, not just Hindi, but all the languages.
I hope so.
And maybe sign language, and maybe your YouTube channel, who knows, and maybe your workshop on many other mothers and fathers who may want to write their books. So more power to you.
Thank you so much, Bhavana. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you very much to many people who are here. I see some familiar faces. Dr. Murthy, good to have you here. Any questions from the audience? If not, thank you, Dishari, for setting this up. We are past our time, so I would like to thank you all for participating here. Do spread the word, buy the book, gift it to someone you love, and buy it for the Common Library as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone. Have a lovely evening and a great weekend.
Thank you.